Susan, thanks for joining us. I understand we've got an issue that we need to use surrogate EFT on, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
You have a son who is now age 25,
That's right.
who is characterized by you as having mental illness, and this began somewhere around age 14 or 15 as far as you know. And the behavior problems have been getting worse and worse over time, etc. Can you give us a little brief rundown, a summary of what the behavior issues are?
I think they focus primarily on severe depression and anger and frustration.
Anger and frustration.
Also mixed in there is not being able to think clearly, mental confusion, impulse, buying, feelings of rejection. He is cycling. He's worse at times than at other times. He's very quick to anger. It's like a brittle state where just he doesn't get what he wants in the moment, and he flashes, and he's extremely angry. He yells. He doesn't realize he's yelling. He swears the minute he doesn't get what he wants. And this is relatively new. I need to say that when he is himself, and I still see glimpses of himself, sometimes it'll last several hours, is a noble person. He's lovely. But when he switches character, and he's extremely difficult.
Okay.
And basically now is left with no friends. There are many people who care about him, many people who are praying for him, but he feels very isolated.
Okay.
This was started seriously in 2009, and he has been through the gamut of medications, any type of medication, antidepressants, antipsychotics. They have not helped him. The side effects are horrible. He's been hospitalized. That didn't lead to anything. He's been to counseling, talk therapy. That did nothing. In fact, he's very resentful now about and refuses to seek any treatment, any further treatment.
Yeah, and that's the point why you and I are talking, because he doesn't want to do anything. He wants to do it his way. He refuses to do any EFT or anything like that.
That's
right?
That's right.
And you also suspicion his diet has something to do with his behaviors, because you can see certain...
Very much so. He's been to a very good clinician who identified several intolerances. They seem to be piling up, of which about 4 things he has an actual allergic reaction. So he has a generalized inflammation. He's in high stress mode all the time. Generalized inflammation, including his brain. And so that's where the everything gets worse.
Okay.
He becomes more brittle. He becomes more angry, more frustrated, etc.
And the difficulty here is that even though you may be logically pointing to certain things he may be eating, drinking, consuming, that he's allergic to, that would trigger him, into these hyper states, he's not about to listen. And
one day he will say yes, that he can't take this food, wheat, for example, and the next day, total denial.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
so as a practical matter, he's not going to comply.
No.
Okay. So we've got an interesting thing here. We've got a possible cause, or at least a contributor, being diet. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And maybe other things that we'll discuss. But as a practical matter, you're really not going to get him to handle. You can't sit there and force feed him, and this guy, he's going to do his own diet and do things he wants to do, and that's how it is. And if it exacerbates the circumstances, it's out of your control. Do I have that?
Yeah, he's. I mean, I can remove all the wheat from the house.
Yeah.
And he can go out and buy a hamburger. I mean, I can't control that.
Yeah, of course, of course.
That's definitely a trigger. I mean, up to very recently, I would say I could tell the type of day he could have by what he ate in the morning.
Yes.
So they very much tie in to those foods being triggers.
Okay. This is all the more reason why surrogate EFT, if you're going to use EFT at all, is the avenue to explore here. He won't sit still for you to use EFT on him. You could probably use EFT with him with some persistence and bring down his allergic reaction to these various foods. We have seen that with great regularity with EFT. Not a guarantee, but it happens so often, it's certainly a big time possibility, okay? But he won't sit still for it, okay?
No.
So you can take the wheat and other things and drop it down, but he won't sit still for it, so you need to do it surrogately. Also, going back to his age 14 or 15, that's when this thing seemed to happen. There was, you thought maybe from an earlier conversation we had, possibly he was getting in with the wrong crowd, maybe there was some drugs, something like that. But you also said to me in an earlier conversation, around age 12, his father left. He felt abandoned by his father. Okay, so I see some emotional issues back there.
Well, he actually left when one's 3.5.
Oh, 3.5.
But after 12, I stopped covering for the dad.
I see.
And so that's when the silence began.
I see.
Until,
So he began to understand now his dad really wasn't there for him.
No, and there were when he had 2 breaks, I swallowed my pride and I phoned his dad and told him. And the dad did nothing. So, and Dana knows that.
Okay.
That they sent him one short email and said, call me if you wish. Yes, and that's not enough. I mean, that's acting like a clinician, not like a dad.
Okay, so with that in mind, let me give you some thoughts about how you would address these things surrogately. Okay. First of all, let me ask you if you have any experience with surrogate EFT, that is tapping on yourself in behalf of someone else.
I have a little bit, Gary. And it does bring down the anger in the moment, but it doesn't stick. Something else will happen shortly after, and it goes up again.
Okay, this is doing it surrogately with your son.
No.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, with or in behalf of your son. So you will see a temporary result, but then off you go. Okay. All right. Now that's really important input. So let me guide you a little bit if I can. I remember asking you in a previous conversation how you addressed it surrogately before. So I want to go over that so I understand it again and the listeners understand that as well. So you would go something like, even though first of all, you would imagine that you were him.
Yeah, I focus in on him.
And then what would you aim EFT at?
The anger.
Well,
even though I'm angry.
What's that?
Even though I'm so angry, I completely love and accept myself as I am.
Okay.
And I work with simple phrases like that.
Okay. So you would imagine yourself being him and being angry and say, even though I'm so angry, duh, okay? All right.
Even though yelling and swearing, even though I feel so alone, even though I have no friends. So I go through the isolation that he feels.
Okay.
And the absolute frustration with that.
Okay. It does not surprise me that you got temporary results, and then the quote came back. It does not surprise me because of the approach. So we would need to be a little more efficient. And so the same rules apply here that it would apply if you were just doing it one-on-one with somebody else. For example, if I was your son and I was sitting in front of you and I was being cooperative with EFT, a better way to go about it is instead of having me say, even though I'm angry, because that's too broad, that's too general, okay? See, I'm angry for some reasons, and we want to get to the reasons that I'm angry. That's getting down to the core, it's getting down to the cause of the anger. The anger is the symptom. The reasons is what we want to get to. That's where we get to be efficient. So, You may not know all the reasons. Maybe you don't know any of them, or you have maybe a clue about some of them, and so on. But it isn't just, when I say reasons, I'm really talking in EFT terms about specific events in his life, things that would give rise to the anger. Now, one specific event that I can pick up from our previous conversation would be the time you told him, that is, you were no longer covering for his dad. You told him at around age 12 that whatever words you said, his dad wasn't there for him, which he would then pick up as, I'm being abandoned, dad doesn't love me. I don't know how he would pick it up, okay? But those are the likelihoods. So, now what you need to do is that would be a cause for the anger. Would you agree with me?
Yes.
It would be a reason for it. So we want to go for that reason, not for the symptom, okay? And to use our more recent metaphor, you want to go for the table leg under the table and not the tabletop, okay? Cut the table legs out from under it and the tabletop, that is the general anger, starts to fall. Got to cut a lot of legs out from underneath it and the tabletop goes, okay? So one way you might approach that would be to imagine that you were him, just to make that assumption, and you might start tapping and say, even though I just learned from mom that dad's not there anymore, and boy do I feel alone with that. Now I'm going to make this up. I'm not him. You'll have to substitute yourself from him for him, and you may well have to make this up because you really don't know for sure what he's doing with that mentally. But you can imagine it well enough, okay? And you just keep doing that. And even though I feel this about that incident and so on, all these little things that go on, even though I'm angry about it and I'm frustrated about it and I feel so alone about it and I'm abandoned about it and I feel guilty about it. Maybe he feels guilty, like he caused it. You know, kids do that sometimes, okay? And I feel fearful because where's my male protection? Okay? So get into that with everything that you can and keep doing several rounds about it. Now, one thing you will be missing here that you may have to creatively fill in would be how to test whether or not this is working. Now, do you have the ability with your son to talk about his father?
At times.
Okay.
And he's calm.
Okay. Well, you've talked about him with his father before, and he's had certain reactions, I gather. Either he shut up or he got angry. I don't know what he did. But he had certain responses. Would I be correct?
Yes. He gets angry.
Okay. So, do this for several, maybe do it 2 or 3 times a day for 2, 3, 4 days. Okay? And use everything you can imagine. Just bring stuff up, you know, in your own mind as though you're him. And then at a time when he's calm, ask him about his father. Bring it up again. And just notice whether he passes it off, or he's angry, less angry, even more angry, whatever it may be. That's a way to test it, because you won't be able to test how you're doing in the moment while you're doing the surrogate tapping. Okay, you'll have to find the right time to test. You already know the before, and if you see some improvement in the after, aha, you've got a clue, you're doing something.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you would go to some other issue that might be a cause for his anger. Maybe one you and I haven't discussed so far. The only thing I know about is around age 14 or 15, he may have gotten into the wrong bunch of kids, and maybe he got rejected there, or I don't know, okay? But even then, when you don't know, use your imagination, an important phrase, make it up. And you may think, well, gee, that would be so artificial to just make it up. But you know, there's a connection between us. You know, we are all connected in a certain way. I'm getting into spiritual things. You may or may not believe that. I don't know. Give me your response to that.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some connection. And are you going to be able to just close your eyes and imagine exactly what happened? Well, maybe, but I would question that, okay? But can you at least be on the target? Probably so. Probably so. Maybe not the exact circumstances and the exact people involved, the exact emotion involved, but can you be on the target? Yeah, I have enough experience with this to say, yes, you can be on the target. And so you keep doing that with these various items, and then you might want to bring these things up to him again at another time when he's calm and see what kind of response he has. And gradually do this testing over time. Unless he's going to cooperate with you, that's the only way you're going to get EFT done here. And since nothing else seems to be working, that is the pills and the medical profession and so on, this is an avenue, since we have such great results otherwise, it's worth pursuing. So I would do that. Now, that's to come at it from the emotional point of view. So, and then you can launch off of that into other things that would come to you. I'm just giving you kind of a launching pad here to start with. When it gets down to the allergies, you can do something with surrogately as simple as, even though I'm allergic to wheat, and when I eat wheat, this happens and that happens and something else happens, okay? And if the medical profession has given you some technical things, and some chemical things that go on in the body, when I eat wheat, this happens with my so-and-so organ, or this happens in my blood, or my blood chemistry. If you know what those things are, just say, and even though these things happen in my blood, for example, I deeply completely accept myself and so on. And so do that with wheat and any other allergens that go on. And you're probably not going to get 1 minute wonders here, understand that. You're probably going to have to keep doing it and chip away at it and then keep testing. And just ask him, did you have a hamburger today? When he's calm or whatever you can. And find out if he did and did. I mean, just notice his behavior, generally. And when you see him eating things, like you say in the morning, you can see what he's eating and you can predict his day. Notice when he's eating these things, if your prediction about his day is any different. See, that's a way to test. Okay? So anyway, those are doors to open for you, avenues to go in. I'm wondering if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, when he encounters a trigger and becomes in his brittle state, he develops certain phobias. So he won't go into a certain part of the house, or he's afraid that the house is going to collapse on top of him.
Oh.
And so they're very real to him.
Yeah.
He's absolutely convinced that this is what's going to happen.
Okay.
Do I roll that in?
Well, no, I would, thank you for mentioning it, I would take those specifically. Even though at times I'm really afraid to go in that room, whatever room, the den, the living room, the whatever it is, okay? Even though I'm really afraid to go in there, and if you don't know the circumstances, the details, you have to make them up. Because I feel so closed in, or I'm afraid of monsters in there, or I'm, whatever.
He's afraid the foundation on the house won't hold, okay, and that the whole thing's going to collapse.
And I'm afraid the whole thing is going to collapse, okay? I deeply, completely accept myself and so on, but keep doing that and keep pulling that apart into as many details as you can, even if you have to make that up. And then, again, you want to do that with some frequency over time. And notice when he gets triggered, how he responds. Are those phobias still there? Are they less? Does he respond in the same way? Will he go in that room? Will he go near the room? I don't know what he does ordinarily, but just notice his behavior. You could, for testing it, and I'm making this up just to give you ideas, you can say, well, take him by the hand and say, let's go in this room for a moment and have a chat. And see what he does, okay? Maybe he'll go in.
He won't set foot in it.
Okay, well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. But if he will, have you got have you gotten some progress? It's a test. It's a test.
Yeah.
Just because he won't doesn't mean you give up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a test. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, just come on in for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someday he'll walk in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got some progress, don't we? And so
Yeah.
inch by inch, piece by piece, maybe even step by step, whether it's inch by inch. You don't know till you try it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
It's complicated. The inability to finish any task. He starts many things, can't bring them to completion.
Okay.
And that's been for some time.
Okay. Well, you may find just doing the other things I've mentioned will start improving things like you just talked about, a behavior like you just talked about. But you can also address that one individually. And you're going to have to, even if you don't know, you'll have to make up why it is he doesn't complete things. Even though I get distracted, even though there's some penalty for completing this, even though I'm afraid of rejection if I don't do it right. I'm making it up, but that you're going to have to fill this in because you know him obviously better than I do because I never met him. Okay.
Yeah.
But making these things up, I want to emphasize that again, isn't as artificial as it seems.
Yeah, I can say that from the time he was very little, like a toddler, he was a real perfectionist. Everything to be just right.
Okay.
So he didn't, he wouldn't try, he would watch and very carefully how other people did things. He would practice in his mind, and then he wouldn't attempt until he could actually do it correctly.
Okay.
The first time.
I'm going to use my intuition here, just to give you a clue about a possibility. Someone who is a perfectionist like this, and there are many adults. I mean, we're all perfectionists to a degree, but some are kind of over the top,
Yeah.
But somebody who's over the top perfectionist tends, I didn't say is, but tends to be someone who has a low self-image, someone who has to have things done just right so they won't be criticized. And then I can imagine when you told him about his father at age 12, that would blow his perfectionism right through the roof. Because here is evidence that he's not perfect. Am I reaching on that one?
Well, I think so because it has a lot to do with why he doesn't complete. He always finds some fault with what he's doing.
Yeah.
And even if it's wonderful, he doesn't think so.
Okay. The other thing I will point out to you, and this is just from me dealing with lots of people in the normal sense of EFT, who have anger. While this isn't absolutely true, there's a general trend that when somebody is over the top and perpetually angry, it is because they have massive guilt inside and they want to project it. They don't want to look inside at our own guilt. None of us do, actually. It's too close to home. The things we did or should have done and all that stuff. We'll go to therapy on other things, what the outside world did to us, but not too close to home guilt, okay? So people have guilt, and they pick it up for the darndest reasons sometimes, especially when you're a child. You can pick up all kinds of things that they're illogical because you're so impressionable. But if you're carrying around lots of guilt, one of the things you do is project it out in the outside world. The rest of the world is to blame for whatever. We're trying to blame the world. It's angry. It's out there. That way we can put our guilt out there and we can blame the world for stuff, for what we feel inside. Okay?
That's exactly what he's doing. If the sun doesn't shine, it's my fault. I'm the one.
Yeah.
So everything is directed at me. It doesn't matter if it had nothing to do with me, but it's all directed at me.
All right. Now, this now, guilt, even though I feel guilty is one of these global, general kind of things, You kind of want to get behind that, and that's going to be more challenging. Because here, I think, unless I have other input from you, you're going to do some imagining, even in early childhood, maybe even in the womb, okay? If he's in the womb and he hears you and your husband arguing, for example, he may be feeling, I see how I'm making this up? I'm trying to give you evidence.
No, it is a possibility.
Okay. It's insecure in here. Out there it's going to be insecure. People are arguing. It's not safe out there. I've got to be perfect. Okay. Not using the English language, of course, but picking this up. It could be as early as that. It could be even after birth, and again, I'm speculating you and your husband might be arguing, and there might be some other negativity running around. It's not safe here. It's not safe. It's not safe. I've got to be perfect. I've got to be just right. I've got to be okay to be loved. I've got to be perfect to be loved. Okay, I can see that, and so make up. Just using my example, make up an argument you and your husband may have had, and imagine you are him at age 2 months or in the womb or whatever, and how you might feel, and try to collapse that with EFT, and keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. There may well be the absolute core issue going on. Again, I'm speculating, trying to give you avenues and doors to go in, okay? But that, to me, intuitively seems like...
I actually think you're right.
Yeah, it's a big one.
On that last one.
Yeah.
That could be a core issue. There was arguing, and we separated when he was 3. There was absolute frustration on both parts.
Yeah.
And the perfectionism, I noticed very early, and no amount of encouraging, just give it a try, it doesn't matter what stopped him from withholding until he could do it perfectly, to the point where he didn't learn to read until he was in grade 3. He just memorized books because I read to him every night, and the teacher said to him, he can't read. And I said, I know he can't read. He's reciting verbatim. He's a very intelligent child, but he couldn't bring himself to read out loud until he could do it perfectly from beginning to end.
Yes.
It was a huge handicap for learning, for experimentation.
Of course, and it builds onto a self-image because he's not like the other kids.
Yeah.
And so it starts to build on itself and build on itself, But this bit about always wanting to be perfect, and you and your husband arguing and things like that, I can really see that being core here. I can see also, and this is typical with a lot of young children, especially when you get divorces around, they tend to say it's all my fault.
Yeah.
Even though they have nothing to do with it, typically, they will take it on as it's my fault. I am guilty. Okay, and that has lots of repercussions out there. Some take it on big time. Some take it on a little bit. It varies all over the place. But I'm speculating your son took this on really big time
and internalized it.
Yeah. And
because
I am. See, imagine going through life. I am guilty.
Yeah.
I am the fault of everything around me.
Yeah.
Well, that will create anger all over the place, or it's likely to.
Yeah, and because in one moment he was a very creative child, a little smart kid, very social. He was the social center of his primary school, just a really lovable kid. But those characteristics started dropping away when he entered puberty.
Yeah.
So that he still had a whole lot of, he placed a lot of importance on friends and friendships, and now suffers terribly because he has no friends. He basically drives them away.
Yeah.
Because of his behavior. But that loss is for him horrific.
Yes, of course. The loss of friends, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's more about I don't fit in. I've been abandoned, even though now he's creating it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that core issue, that's a big one to go after.
Yeah.
Okay. And remember though, you go after it with specific events. The more specific you get, the better EFT works, even if you have to make them up.
Yeah.
Very specific things. Not I was angry in the second grade, too broad. Or not I was angry in the womb, too broad. The time I'm in the womb and my mother and father are arguing about X and my mom is really mad. Okay? And I can feel it. Okay? That's specific, very specific, okay? And there may be lots of those, and that's the important part. You want to get as many table legs underneath that tabletop as you can. So go back to all the arguments and all the altercations that you can. Get very specific with them, and keep at them, okay? Now, what's called the generalization effect also applies here. Meaning, if there were 100 such altercations, or 1,000, or whatever there may have been, typically you only need to take care of 5, 10, 15, 20, and do them well, because the rest of them are sort of, they got the same people in them. I mean, they have some commonalities in them. So you do a few of them really well, the rest of them collapse because it kind of generalizes over all of them. So you have to do 100 or 1,000. But do 5, 10, 15, 20 really, really well. Specific events. I mean, tattoo that inside your eyelids because that's ultimately important.
Gary, where do you suggest I start?
I would start with the core issue. I don't think you're going to see immediate results with it, however. So I would add to that some of these other things like the thing about the wheat or the allergies and see how he behaved. Start with, also add in things where you will see results because that will give you some confidence in it. Even if they're little results, it will give you confidence that something's working. So, you know, the phobias, will he go in the room? You know, the eating the hamburger or whatever he's eating in the morning, the allergies, you know, the toxins and so on. See if you can't get some results with that. I'm not remembering everything we talked about today, but the things that you can test and see more immediate results on, make sure you have some of those there too. Otherwise, you'll just be doing this in the dark, and the result you would get from the core issue is likely to be very gradual. Okay, it probably won't be a 1-minute wonder.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. What I would be very satisfied if he got to the point where he would actually see somebody. Then I would stop because I actually think someone else would do a better job.
Well,
but I can't get him there.
Yeah, okay. And it may well be he'll calm down to a point. And I wouldn't tell him you're doing any of this, by the way, unless you think it's appropriate.
No.
And then maybe later on, if he's calm and he has more calm periods and less angry periods and that kind of stuff, and you feel appropriate, you know, mention it if you think it's appropriate.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Love your smile, Susan. Thank you so much for sharing all this with it. This is going to be helpful to a lot of people.
Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate it.
Okay.